Audit Committee meeting today. I would like to call our meeting to order. It's now 10:05. We thank you for all those that were able to be in attendance. So this is our Audit Committee meeting for Thursday, March the 21st, 2024. We have agenda presented before us. The first item on the agenda is approval of the July 20th, 23rd, and the November 17th, 2023 Audit Committee meetings. Maybe the board be aware that we at those times did not have a quorum to pass the minutes, and so we're doing that at this meeting. All right, can I get a vote on the meeting minutes? I got a second. Okay, all those in favor? All right, thank you. The minutes have been approved. We have a pretty long agenda today. I know it is very short. So the next item on our agenda is a resolution authorizing the modification in a contractual authorization for the internal audit governance risk and compliance software, L4 6790, with Diligent Canada Inc., Emmanuel, AGM Internal Audit. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Next slide, please. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Greenwood, members of the MARTA Audit Committee, thank you for the opportunity to present the resolution to modify the contract with Diligent Canada. I would like to begin by giving you a little bit of context around what I'm requesting you to approve. This is an existing technology that we use in the Department of Internal Audit, and I would compare this to Microsoft or Oracle for the entire enterprise. This technology platform is used to run the entire operation of the Internal Audit Department. We manage all of the audit engagements, all of the report auditing findings. We create executive reports for the Audit Committee and for the MARTA Executive Management Team. We manage all of the Internal Audit Department operations. We also manage, the adherence of the Internal Audit Department to various different auditing standards. This is really the lifeblood of the Internal Audit Department, without which we will have a really hard time operating. It's a very critical element of our business continuity plan. And I will give you an example. When COVID came, one day we were told to go work from home for a week, which turned out to be 2 years. But when that happened, my employees took their laptops at home, and we did not miss a beat. We continued to produce the audits that would normally produce at home, in the office, because this solution is independent of the MARTA enterprise network. We can access it from our work computers, from our phones, from our home computers. So if something, God forbid, were to happen, and we can't access the MARTA network, we can continue to do our work from anywhere in the world, from any device that we choose to do. The last bullet talks about software as a service cloud package, and I wanted to place this on the slide because by going into the cloud and using software as a service, we're saving MARTA a significant amount of money. By my estimation, we're probably saving $60,000 to $100,000 a year just because we're not using MARTA servers, we're not using MARTA network, we're not using MARTA storage and support personnel to continuously upgrade the equipment every 3 months. So I think the savings is substantial as we are in the cloud. So this is kind of a very brief snapshot of what the technology is. This is also a product by a company that sells the iCompass. So Diligent is an existing provider. You're already using the software. Another piece of software. I hope you like it. So you're not biased in your decision. I hope you like iCompass. But they also sell us iCompass under a separate contract. Next slide. From a financial point of view, we've already paid $272,000 over several years, and I'm asking for an authorization to pay the next year's bill for $64,275 because the amount requires a board authorization. It's already part of our regular operating budget. So I don't see an increase in our budget to pay the bill, but I do require your authorization. I respectfully request the approval of this resolution. This concludes my briefing, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Mill. Appreciate that very much. Can I get a motion? And a second. Okay, it's been moved and second. Are there any questions from the board members? Yes, Mr. Durrett.
On the resolution that we see in front of us, there's a dollar difference between what it is and what Emil presented. Is that important?
I would.
What's the difference? I'm sorry.
What I read here is it's 64,276 to bring it up to 375,192, and if the motion is to bring it, is to make it 275, it's a dollar difference, and I don't know if that's important.
No.
I think it was a rounding
Yeah.
issue.
We'll be okay.
Okay, I'm just asking the question.
Yep, no, that's fair.
All right. Mr. Pine.
You were talking about your workload, and Mr. Durrett would be glad to help you and your staff during your audit, so I can tell he will do a good job.
We'll come to that point in the next presentation. But having a line-minded person always warms up my heart. We think along the same lines.
All right, any other questions or comments? Well, once again, you're comfortable with this software. It seems like it's working well for what you're trying to do, and it's being very effective, so we're grateful for that. Hearing no other questions, I call the question concerning the motion. All right? Please vote. All right, the motion passed, the resolution passed. All right.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is an internal audit activity briefing from Emil Zanoff, AGM Internal Audit. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the external audit activity briefing, which is customary for us to deliver to the board, which will cover MARTA's fiscal year second quarter beginning on October 1st and ending December 31st, 2023. So Q2 of MARTA's fiscal 24. Next slide. Thank you. Beginning with the operational audit group, we concluded a very lengthy audit of the MARTA Employee Charity Club, where we identified 4 significant findings. The outcome of this audit was discussed at length during the November MARTA Audit Committee meeting, so I didn't plan to discuss it again during this meeting, but just wanted for the record to recognize the issuance of the report in October of 2023. As a result of the findings related to the MARTA Employee Charity Club, we added an advisory review of another similar club called MARTA Employee Club, which we concluded beyond the end of the reporting period. We're in the report writing phase as of December 31st, but I will be able to give you a briefing of the outcome of that review during the May Audit Committee meeting. But we had to add this to our work plan, and I'm required to disclose that to the board under the auditing standards. In addition to that, we were working on 3 very substantial audits: wayside access and safety, track maintenance, and mobility and paratransit service. The first 2, wayside safety and track maintenance, really were focused primarily on the safety of our workers and passengers. That was the focus of those audits. Mobility is soup to nuts, kind of an audit of the mobility contract and the mobility services. I'm hoping that for the first 2, wayside and track maintenance, we'll be able to debrief the board and finish those by the end of this month. We'll report the outcome during the May Audit Committee meeting. Next slide, please. In terms of prior operational audits that still had some outstanding findings, we've cleared up quite a few of them. We still work with the capital project or the capital improvement program on 7 findings that are in progress. 21 of the 28 were closed, but 7 are being worked on. We are meeting regularly with Latika Washington. I think she's there. on the progress being made, and I'll continue to keep it here until I'm comfortable that we can close some of these issues when they've kind of crossed the finish line. And I've mentioned this before, but we generally don't close audit issues hoping that something will be fixed. We need records and documents that it has been fixed, and that's when we take it off the slide. Next slide, please. This is the second of the two slides related to prior operational audit findings. That's why they have an A and B on the slide. There is really two outstanding significant findings here that being worked on. One is in the transit-oriented development. They're working on getting a document management system. We've been told the end of December they'll be able to do that. And the other one is in the HR space, attracting and retaining employees around a kind of like a formal employee handbook that our employees would benefit from having. The last audit was an interim audit of the Indian Creek Station. We've closed these three findings there, so we'll drop this off at the next audit committee meeting. We do plan to have a follow-up audit on Indian Creek sometime, maybe next year, to see how things are going. So overall, out of the 38 significant findings, 9 in progress and 29 closed. Let's proceed to the next slide. Switching over to the IT audit domain, we finished one pretty big audit around the IT support of critical enterprise applications and systems during the quarter. That was rated high risk with 1 significant finding and 3 moderate findings. And sometimes in the IT space, the findings have a security-sensitive nature, so normally we don't describe them on the slide, and this is the reason why they're not described as we would describe an operational audit findings, but we'll track this to remediation. I think this one can be remediated, so I'm optimistic that it will fall off the slide in the, in this calendar year. And we kicked off 2 other audits. One is IT software asset management, and the other one is enterprise backup and disaster recovery. Why are these audits important? The first one, the software asset management, if we don't know what software we have in the authority, we can't protect it. That's as simple as I can describe it. So we need to know what we have so Lawrence can protect it. The second one is enterprise backup and disaster recovery. Why is that important? In a very, very unfortunate set of circumstances, if we were to get breached, we need to be able to recover quickly so we can continue to dispatch trains, we can continue to dispatch mobility vans, we can continue to be in business. Everything these days is based on bits and bytes. We have to have the technology to run the operation. So very important audit as well. So we're in the midst of that too. Let's move on to the next slide. These are prior IT audits with open findings, and I will give you just a high-level summary. In the November audit committee meeting, we had a grand total of 13 past due findings. Through a lot of heavy lifting with Rhonda and her team, we've brought down that to 4. Can we move on to the next slide so I can speak to it actually? We've moved that to 4, and I'm being told that as of today, there are actually 3 in the yellow box. So we're moving from 13 to 3, which in my view, I'm an auditor, I rarely pay compliments just by the nature of the work. But this is a substantial progress that's been achieved by the IT team and the cybersecurity team over the last several months since the November audit committee meeting. There's more work to be done. There's more issues to be solved, but I have to recognize the progress as well. So out of the 24, 19 closed, 1 in progress, and 4 past due. As you might imagine, we continue to do new audits, so the numbers will go up and down, and that's normal. But I've seen substantial progress over the last 4 months. Next slide. This is our contract group. This is the busiest probably audit group of all of them, working lots and lots of hours because with the capital program, with some of our other procurements, we have substantial demand on their time, and that demand has increased substantially with the capital program, and it will increase even more with the way we have now re-engineered the process, whereby all the contracts need to go through audit before they come to a board committee meeting, and that will require us to turn these things around very, very, very quickly. We finished 38 audits in the quarter. Right about now, we're at a point where we would normally be at the end of the fiscal year in terms of output of that contract audit group. So extremely high demand for their time. We identified 141,000 in unallowable overhead costs, primarily in 2 separate contracts, and also $374,000 in unsupported cost in cost price analysis and change order reviews. Again, these dollars come primarily from two contracts where we identified some unsupported costs. So hopefully they were taken out of the equation. Next slide. The fraud, waste, and abuse summary, and again, this is Q2 we're talking about. We closed the MARTA Employee Charity Club, and between October and the end of December, there were no new reports coming through the fraud, waste, and abuse hotline. And as a reminder, that's a hotline that's managed by a third-party provider. So we kind of have that anonymity built into the process, but there were no new reports during that period of time. Next slide. Finally, there's some organizational updates. I'm required to disclose that we added the MARTA Employee Charity Club to the FY24 internal audit plan. The standards also require me to disclose the request for additional resources to the board. I have requested in the fiscal 25 audit plan 2 incremental positions for an auditor 2, because we're seeing a significant uptick in audits required to enable the capital program and other programs, because we do audit everything else. We audit Stadler, we audit all the IT procurements, we audit everything else. So we do require more resources to be able to turn these audits fast enough to be able to enable the process for a procurement to come to the board to review it, vote on it, and move down to execution. We're choosing to go to FTEs because in the audit industry, we'll probably pay double the amount if we go with contractors than if we go with FTEs. And I can give you the numbers if you're interested, but it's roughly double. It's a little more than double, but roughly double if we go with contractors. So I've requested full-time employees. And finally, the department is moving this week as we speak to Uptown. So if you need to find me beginning next week, please come to the 5th floor of the Uptown building facing Kroger, and you can find me there. I'm sorry, what was the question? Actually, we volunteered to move because I think it's good for us to experience some change and also to enable other organizations to move in here. So we were one of the first groups to volunteer to move. During expect to come here, plan for
to audit, you don't spend your time on the audits because you don't audit everything. There are selective areas you audit. So I'm just curious how those decisions are made.
Absolutely. So we have 3 audit branches, and I'll give you a little bit of a lengthy answer. For IT audits and for operational audits, which are grouped under the standards under performance audits, we audit them based on a risk assessment. So we take a risk-based approach, which is part of the standards. We assess the risk, we see where the biggest risks are, and then we go and audit those areas. When it comes to the contract audits, it's a little bit different. It's actually quite a bit different because those requirements are baked into the MARTA Act because of the delegation of authority and how much the general manager can sign off on, and anything under 200,000 has to go to the board. And from the MARTA Act, we have MARTA procurement policies and procedures. They enable the compliance to the MARTA Act, and the MARTA's procurement policies require us to audit certain things. So we can't really choose what to audit because then we push the organization into violation of its own policies, which is not good. And that kind of, puts into questions how well we comply to the MARTA Act. So when it comes to these 38 audits a quarter or 40 audits a quarter, it's not really optional. Every single source that's over $200,000 has to come to internal audit. You don't buy much for $200,000 these days, unfortunately. And so we have to audit more and more because of that. So unfortunately, it just has to be audited by policy and law.
Okay. Second question on the operational audit for TOD lease payments. And I was just trying to get a sense for how much money are we talking about and where was that? I mean, we were talking about $10,000 or $300,000 in payments not received from.
I can't recall the numbers. I have them in the audit report, and I don't have it in front of me, unfortunately. I think it's in the millions. It's not in, tens of thousands of dollars. The program is pretty big, and we're doing more of it. So this was really a process audit that looks backwards. But also by looking backwards, we can make recommendations that will enable the organization to create the infrastructure to support a much bigger TOD going forward without experiencing some of the issues that they may have experienced in the past. So I think it's in the millions, but I'll be remiss if I give you a number.
Let me rephrase the question. Do we have a large amount of money that's owed to us by our contractual agreements with these companies that have a TOD lease? That's my question. I'm just trying to get a sense for, is there a lot of money out there that is owed to MARTA by these TOD?
I'll have to find out as of today because we don't track this on a continuous basis, and this audit was done in the last fiscal year, so I don't recall the numbers.
Golly, I'd just be concerned that some of these developers or whatever always cash. They like to hold on to their cash. I would just be concerned if there's some real money out there that's owed to MARTA, that we do what we need to do there.
Yeah, great. We'll do that review. We don't have it in front of us, but thank you, Al. We'll make sure that we dig that up and bring it back to the board.
And just, Colin, if I can, just to clarify, it was more of the accounting practice. It wasn't that we weren't getting paid. So my understanding in working with Jacob and his team on responding to some of the questions, we've gotten the money in. We just didn't have a good process to account for it on the front end or the back end.
All right, Mr. Floyd.
Other than providing this information to the board on a regular basis, what do you do with the information you get?
We provide various reports to the executive team. Obviously, we provide the audit reports to the leaders of the business units that we audit so they can remediate. Other than them, we retain the information in our system. I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, yeah, but I guess there are no external reporting requirements regarding the MARTA Act?
There is no external reporting requirements other than the provisions of the Open Records Act. So from time to time, we do get requests to provide audits to the media or to other interested parties. They run through legal, and we comply with them all the time and always, but we don't publish our audit reports online, for example. And the reason for that is oftentimes the audit reports contain information about process gaps. And we don't want to educate people of how to go around the system before we fix it. So I'm hesitant to put our audit reports online because of the nature of an audit report, which highlights, process gaps or IT gaps and things of that nature. So we don't publish those online, if that's the question.
Well, it is, and what I'm getting to is trying to figure out my responsibility here in listening to your reports as a board member. What do I do if I find something? Is it, I guess I'm asking the question is if I see something that I don't necessarily like, how do I make that known? Is it a board action that would require doing something different than you would normally do? I mean, am I interpreting that right?
Bill, just so I understand, are you talking about if you see something in the presentation you don't like, or if you're aware of something going on in the organization?
Either one. Is there, and I guess we've got this MARTA committee, we've got responsibilities to the state and providing information that this information, it appears to me, is just for us and not, it's all internal.
Correct. Correct. And, the government auditing standards, the standards of the Institute of Internal Auditors are written in a way that this information is provided by the head of audit to the audit committee so that the audit committee can properly, execute its oversight over MARTA, over the organization itself. I don't believe there's any requirements in law or standards that require a board member to debrief other entities on the audit findings or to disseminate the information or to do anything other than help them to make decisions as it relates to the authority itself.
Okay, so any requirement that might come out of some of this, or any desire that might come out of one of these meetings to report something to DeKalb County, as I'm a DeKalb County board member, is not my responsibility.
No,
that's your responsibility.
That's my responsibility. I would see, everything Emil reports on, and I thought your question was going this way, is corrective actions required, process improvements are required. We do that internally. Emil standing here is a demonstration of his independence from the MARTA organization in sharing that in complete disclosure to the board members. But in terms of acting on the information that we found, that is something that we're consistently doing.
Mrs. Frida Hodge?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question. So MARTOC, he brought it up, but the MARTOC audit, I know one year we had to do a special audit, but the normal years of MARTOC, does that come through your department, or we still use an outside agency for that?
For MARTOC, we have to use an outside audit firm by law,
All right,
and we will get it done this year.
yeah. And then the other question is, are these your employees back here watching?
No, my
Okay.
employees are
I was
not.
going to say thank
Yeah.
you if it was. So
They're
okay.
watching on YouTube, though.
Well, thank you. We appreciate what they're doing.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? I just have one. I think on slide 4, you were mentioning that one of the findings had to do with document management systems that were not in place. But it seems like all of these things were closed out. Is there something else that may have been highlighted that was not covered?
You're talking about the Office of Real Estate does not have a document management system?
Yes. Right.
So this is the only item that remains open to be remediated or fixed by Jacob and his team. The other 2 findings around collecting late fees or verification of ground lease payments, that's been closed, that's been fixed.
Okay.
So that's the only thing that, as a significant major finding that's outstanding, that we want to keep on the slide to make sure it gets done. And that's really something that's, when you manage everything on paper, it's very inefficient and it can easily slip, and then you have key employee risks. When somebody leaves, nobody knows where the stuff is. So they do need a robust document management system to kind of retain those records and easily find them.
Okay.
And transition from one employee to another. But there's nothing more to it than that.
Okay, great, thank you. All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Mr.
Thank
Emil.
you.
Appreciate it. The next item on the agenda is a cybersecurity briefing by Mr. Lawrence Williams, AGM, Chief Information Security Officer. Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Greenwood, members of the MARTA Board Committee. I'm Lawrence Williams, the new AGM of Information Security here at MARTA. I bring 20 years of IT and cybersecurity experience with MARTA. I've worked for the Department of Defense for a number of years doing IT and cybersecurity in a variety of roles, both as a senior civilian, as a contractor, and a senior military officer. I've also worked in the private sector doing private security, information security. MARTA's Department of Information Security is chartered with the responsibility of protecting the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the authority's computing and networking systems. We're also responsible for the assets when it comes to technology and the data that those assets use. We protect this data from improper use and cybersecurity attacks. While certain details of the cybersecurity program I will not go and discuss today, as this is a public presentation, I want to provide a summary and a general overview of MARTA Cybersecurity Department, what we do and why we do some of the things, and what that means for MARTA on a large scale. As you can see on the slide, we have 6 core functions, and they are developing and maintaining and overseeing policies, process, and control techniques to ensure all applicable information security, regulatory, compliance, and cyber insurance requirements are met for the authority. Overseeing and managing the information and cybersecurity risk management program while evaluating and testing all information systems, data processes, and communication systems for security risk. We also monitor, detect, contain, mitigate, and report cybersecurity incidents that threaten the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of the authority's data and network infrastructure. We oversee the authority's vulnerability management program to ensure that all information systems, SCADA systems, are properly secured, maintained, and patched. We also ensure compliance with all federal, state, and local governmental, regulatory, and other compliance requirements. And finally, we ensure all protective requirements are in place to remain qualified for MARTA cyber insurance requirements. So I know that's a lot there. So in a nutshell, what we do is we make sure that anything that is in the realm of IT and information security that is protected properly to the appropriate standards. Sometimes our job transitions different areas of MARTA's infrastructure from not just the computers that you use today to see your data, but how we communicate, whether it's the phones, how the trains operate, the data that we maintain. I would tell you now, and we're going to go into a little more detail, but the threats to cybersecurity are at an all-time high, and I think we all know that. But MARTA's cybersecurity department is poised to protect, identify, and mitigate these threats on above national standard. Next slide. Want to highlight that MARTA uses a range of strategies to ensure the electronic information within its custody is protected, including risk management, employee training, documentation, protocols, and various technologies. On the screen, you'll see a couple of the compliance regulations that we use as best practices for the cybersecurity industry. These include the Federal Transit Administration Cybersecurity Regulation, PCI and DSS, which is the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards, which is our how we protect our credit cards, the customer information that use credit cards, anything when it comes to transactional information. And we do that at a very high standard. And also various standards from the National Institute of Science and Technology. So this is the foundation of our information security network and how we teach, how we train, we mitigate risk. And it's important to me that I share the knowledge that I have throughout the authority. One of the things that I did when we first got here is we increased the phishing attack campaigns. So MARTA employees would receive additional training on phishing campaigns, which is a high probability of how attacks occur within large infrastructures. We got a lot of positive results from that, but you know, it's important that everybody is a part of the information security team that understands what we do and the importance of protecting our data. Our security program is designed, again, to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of electronic information. Sometimes people get confused on what that means for me, right? The confidentiality is that when, an example of that is if you send an email, that email only goes to the person that's intended to. A lot of these attackers have the skill to be able to almost listen in or review your data, right? And for what we do for the public sector, that's important that we're able to protect that. So when you're communicating with somebody, or if we're sending a signal to any variety of things on our network, we're confident that that signal gets to where it's supposed to be and there's no interruption. I want to talk about integrity for a second. As nation-state adversaries increase in their ability to interrupt the functionality of our operations, integrity is important, the integrity of our data, integrity of our communications. So this gets pretty advanced, right? You know, we are looking at more advanced systems to make sure that data is not manipulated, that what we see is what is intended to see. So an example of that would be if there is a signal that was sent from train control, that the signal is sent to say that, you know, maybe we need a certain light on the train to blink a certain way, that we can ensure that that signal is sent and received in the right format. Some of the attacks are more and more complex that we have to make sure that we understand at a very high level of how to protect that. And that requires us to be highly trained and understand the various national standards that are in compliance. Next slide. So wanted to talk about some of the most common cybersecurity threats that have targeted the transportation sector. They include malware attacks, ransomware attacks, denial of service attacks, and phishing attacks. These are a few recent high-profile cybersecurity attacks to the transit industry, and they include an attack by or from Johnson Security Controls. It was a ransomware attack, and the cybersecurity attacks on the Australian port operations. Again, my intent is not to go into detail about the anatomy of this attack, but to highlight that the threat of cybersecurity attacks are increasing at an unprecedented rate, and the complexity of these attacks are increasing. And the authority must continue to invest in resources such as people, processes, and technology to stay ahead of the curve. One of the things that we're doing is we're increasing our relationship with federal authorities, including the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, CISA, and other transit authorities, so we understand what the common best practices are and that we can stay ahead of potential attacks and attack vectors. Next slide. Again, the threat of a cyber disruption to a critical infrastructure is at an all-time high. Increasing attacks demonstrate the ability of unauthorized users to access sensitive information and impact critical infrastructure. MARTA's Information Security Department is poised to identify, detect, and mitigate risk in the information space to protect MARTA's customers, employees, and reputation as we continue to advocate for and provide safe, multinodal transit services that advance prosperity, connectivity, and equity for a more livable region. Next slide. Wanted to highlight some of the activities for our cybersecurity department. These are some initiatives at a high level. We already talked about the payment card PCI industry standards. They're moving to an increased standard, and MARTA is leading the way in that. I have a team that focuses particularly on this, and we are doing, in my opinion, a very good job staying ahead of, you know, the latest requirements to protect payment information. We're also have an initiative on network access control, identity management, and cloud security. These initiatives aren't to say that, you know, we're not doing well. It's that we're continuing to stay ahead of the curve on the latest technologies and security practices. We've had a couple procurements since I've been here that affect the enterprise network system, the governance and risk and compliance, OT, ICS, and SCADA systems. So we are actively leaning forward, being proactive to protect the authority's information systems. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes my presentation.
All right, thank you, Mr. William. I know this is your first time, I believe, presenting to us, and welcome aboard to MARTA. We're glad that you're on board with us. Are there any comments or questions from the board members? Mr. Floyd.
Yeah, just a few quick ones. I'll welcome you also. If we are attacked in some way, what are your requirements regarding reporting to us or to some other government agency?
Trying to think of how to summarize that at a high level in this environment here. I would like to do a working session. We can go into more detail, but we have requirements to report both to federal authorities, including Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. And of course, as soon as I'm aware of something, I have an obligation to report to Mr. Greenwood and of course to my boss, Mr. Andrews. So that's the first people that I would talk to. Now I would tell you at a lower level, you know, we are constantly, I would say, probed. I have a team that sees threats on a consistent basis. So there are days where they'll notify me and say, hey, Mr. Williams, we see this is unusual. I don't report all of that up. I contain some of that information. I think what you're referring to is if we're compromised, right? If there's something that I'm unable to contain and it affects the operation of the authority. And that's when I would report to Mr. Andrews and Mr. Greenwood.
So you do have some personal discretion about what you report and how it goes, depending on the level of...
Yes, sir. There are levels, and we...
That's normal. Okay.
Yes, sir. There are levels, and we document everything that we're doing. You know, I have a weekly direct reports to Mr. Andrews where we'll share things that are, I would say, anomalies, right? If it's something that's really weird that, you know, we don't normally see, I would share that. And we also have a good relationship with, again, the Department of Homeland Security where, you know, if it's something that, again, is out of, you know, anomaly, we would, you know, share that with them as well.
Okay, and because I'm so ignorant about this stuff, it scares me to death. But in knowing that, but from an overall concept, who's in charge in this country? Who's responsible? Like if what happened to Fulton County? I mean, there's some kind of report that goes somewhere. How do you get the information of what happened there in order that it might help you do your job? Who's in charge of all that?
So again, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but at a high level, the relationship that... No. And I'm happy to answer the questions, but I don't want anybody to think that I'm being intentionally vague, just because this is a public forum. But again, I'm happy if there is a more, you know, right. But to answer your question, the relationship that we have with the federal authorities, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and CISA, you know, that is our main information reporting and sharing venue. We have a good relationship with both the FBI, CISA, federal authorities, that if there is something that is taking place, they will make sure that we know. They have my personal information. They have my email. We get weekly updates from the Department of Homeland Security on things that we should be aware of, and we're constantly updating things that we're doing based on that. Another example is we work with the 10 largest transit authorities. I went to a conference in New York where federal authorities, they did a presentation. They talked to us about some best practices. They talked to us about how to make sure that we're in the network. So there is a line of communication that takes place, and we're part of that. And I'm confident that, you know, if there was anything that took place in the federal space, that it would be shared with us, and we would respond in a timely manner.
Okay, last question I'll ask you regards budget and your availability of MARTA funds to you to do your job. Where, I mean, we're getting ready to go into a budget year. Are there things that this board ought to be aware of regarding funding requirements for you to do your job effectively?
Yes, so, yes, sir. So we do have budget requirements. I am pretty aggressive on our budget, but I'm happy to report that MARTA's been very, very supportive of getting us the things that we need. And I know, again, that's at a high level, but I've been able to be resourced both on a short-term and a long-term perspective to get what I need to do my job within the authority.
Okay, I just don't want to be sitting here 6 months from now and MARTA's shut down for some cybersecurity attack and hear what if we'd had another $500,000, we could fix this, so.
No, sir, that will not be the issue at all.
Okay.
Do you have an extra $500,000?
Hey, Bill, if we're hacked, it's probably because of a hole that you opened with one of your questions about this.
Well, it won't be from information I have, I can tell you that, but, because I don't know enough to ask the questions, but it does scare me to death, and I mean, people like you that are able to do this kind of work are as far invaluable to this organization. So I commend you for first being willing to step into this position, you know, and maintain these questions from people like me about how to do your job when I have no idea how to do your job. But anyway, you have all my respect and credit for being willing to do it and stand there and do it, because it is an enormous worldwide problem
Absolutely.
we're dealing with. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I do want to say that I have one of the best teams that anybody that could work with in this space. So it's not just me. We have some amazing employees here at MARTA that do cybersecurity, and their willingness to go to training. I know I've put them under the stress here to get additional training, so I want to acknowledge that it's not just me, it's their willingness to learn and to grow and to be a part of the community to make sure that MARTA's safe. Good job,
because politicians, we're all given training in how to give credit where we really don't think it is due, you know. It's really us, so, and you've done a good job at making me believe that you've got some good employees, so.
All right. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Williams, thank you for the update, and thank you for the examples of some high-risk situations. Do you know of any threats or risks specifically to transit agencies in, say, like the past 3 to 5 years or so?
Yes, I do. I would rather not say that in this forum. Happy to share, only because I think information is key, right? I will also report that the largest threats to the transit authorities within the United States have been mitigated, right? So while I could give some examples, we were, and I say we as a transportation authority within the United States, have been pretty successful. And that's why we're a part of that consortium with the 10 largest transit authorities, where we share best practices. And they also share some of their challenges, right? When there have been large cybersecurity attacks that they were able to mitigate, and how they were able to recover from those.
All right, thank you. Any other additional information, questions?
I was just going to say that if y'all wanted some more of the in-depth specific information, we can ask Mr. Williams to come back in executive session at the next work session to go into those things. If you really want to know the nitty-gritty, the things that are going to keep Mr. Floyd up at night, we can do that.
Absolutely.
Well, wow. Well, thank you. We understand this is a very, very critical part of this of operations, and we understand the sensitivity of it. We just need to know what you're faced with, because we're gonna make sure that we support this. Are there any other questions? Any other comments from the board? Okay, Mr. Williams, thank you very much. We appreciate your briefing.
Thank you.
Are there any other matters before this board? Hearing none, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.